Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Talking about forgetting where you come from. Welcome to Just Africa on Souk News Television, a program that's crafted to discuss the growth and challenges that seem to be a clog in the wheel of progress of Africa and the solutions with brilliant minds of how to solve such issues. My name is Swift Aderinto, and I'm not alone on the table. I have a very brilliant young man. I call him my South and fresh brewed cup of tea. Priye. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Swift.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm fine. So today I want to ask a question. What's your favorite thing about Africa? Or what's that thing that makes you feel like, oh, I do this, it means I am African?
The thing I do that makes me think or feel that I'm more African, surprisingly, none. Okay, maybe I have not actually looked at it.
Okay.
But there's something you said during the introduction of the program when you were trying to talk to me, and you said brewed cup of tea, because I think that's in line with what we were talking about.
Yes.
And I know I like coffee, and I know I am the tea kind of person. Early in the morning, I want to be seated on my desk with a cup of tea by my left-hand side, and I'm working and I'm sipping that.
I like that. I like that. And I actually like it to be moved a little bit up. Talking about what makes me very, very African, it's the fact that my name is Swift Aderinto. Once you hear that name, you know that, look, this girl, Aderinto, is an African name. And today we are talking about something that is really interesting. We are talking about cocoa, and we are discussing, which is important. We are talking about the cocoa industry.
Yeah.
So the question for today is, can we reviving the cocoa industry? So in between, we are asking a question. Can we revive the cocoa industry? What does it take? What will it cost us as a government and a people to revive the cocoa industry? There was once a time in Nigeria that we were the highest producers of cocoa in Africa. Right now, we have three leading giants. We have Ivory Coast and Ghana. Ivory Coast, of course, is tops, and Ghana follows. Nigeria is third. Africa, for now, produces 75% of cocoa in Africa. And Nigeria and Ghana and Ivory Coast share 60%. Nigeria, unfortunately, has a 6% in this ratio. That's how terrible it is from the leading producer of cocoa in Africa. So I want to ask you, Priye, what do you think can be done, or what do you think has taken us to that point where we are, that we are no more number one, we are not even number two. We are now down the ladder. And if care is not taken, the fear is we will keep receding.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, if we're talking about history, we need to first look at, you mentioned something very, very significant.
Yes.
Why did we drop? Now, the thing is, agriculture as an industry has so many different, sectors, subsectors. And these sectors, cocoa is one part of it.
Yes.
Cocoa, between 1940 and 1970, primarily in 1940, Nigeria was seen as the highest producer of cocoa, if not number two, one of the highest in the world.
Yes.
And at that point in time, we were doing good. So fast forward from 1940 to 1970, we still held that position as one of the highest producers of cocoa in the world. But you know that in 1970 we discovered oil. I think around between the 1960s and 1970s we discovered oil in our country, and Nigerians, the leaders of the country, shifted attention from agriculture and from cocoa down to oil. And because they did that, investment dwindled, infrastructure was left comatose as all attention was shifted, in fact, to the fact that we used to have the regional cocoa commodities board, 6 regional commodities board at that particular point in time that were managing the different 6 regions. And I think then it was later on collapsed to a central commodities board.
Yes.
And that in itself led, to the complete, collapse of that system. So when it went south like that, at that point in time, Côte d'Ivoire was still maintaining that position.
Yes.
So at that time, Nigeria was playing second.
Okay.
It was just a little bit above Ghana, or Nigeria and Ghana was sharing that. But Ivory Coast has always been there, been number one. Nigeria probably would be doing about 200,000 metric tons of them. Ivory Coast was doing about 700,000 metric tons.
I heard the president of Ivory Coast said, look, cocoa is our own goal, our own oil.
Yes. Oh, okay. I didn't even know he said that.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's obvious that they were doing very, very well at that point in time. So oil came in. It's a blessing, but I think we mismanaged the process, talking about economic diversification, and we left that cocoa and the agricultural sector to completely, collapse. Today, what are we talking about? I'm glad that in May this year, the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, was talking about, bringing reviving the National Cocoa Management Board. In fact, he also made a promise that to show the seriousness of the administration and of the government, is going to have to establish a personal cocoa farm.
Fantastic.
Yes, he said that, so that we can move from cocoa growth, production, to processing and export.
Yes.
And they mentioned other things significant that at the moment you look at it, we can be looking at maybe a few thousands of dollars for cocoa. But by the time you turn it around, you can have 9,000. When it is processed, you can have 30,000. And when other values are added, we can migrate from 30,000 to 50,000.
Wow.
So if we are not maximizing the process, it's going to be that now you say we are in the 6th position.
No, third. We are still third.
We're still third in Africa.
Which is shocking in Africa.
6th
in Africa.
In the world.
Yes.
6th in the world. If we had been consistent, I don't think we would have dropped from the position where we were in 1940.
And talking about consistency, so I was listening to the chairman of Cocoa Producers Association, and he said, look, we have 26 states in Nigeria that are capable of growing cocoa, from Taraba to Benue. And in Nigeria now, we are making most of our produce from Ekiti, Cross River, a bit from Edo. So they have like 3-4 states that are raising this 6%. So imagine if government makes a conscious effort to go into these other states and start to do that. But no problem, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, I am about to take you on a break, but I want to whet your appetite by letting you know that when we come back, I am going to be introducing somebody who is a spectacular guest. My guest is not just going to be coming in, he's going to be bringing in solid facts and statistics to give us deeper understanding. His name is Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze. You also want to be part of the conversation, but of course, drop in your comments on all our social media platforms, and we are streaming live. We want to hear what you have to say or your thoughts on this issue about cocoa production in Nigeria and what can be done to revive this industry. My name is Swift. Don't go anywhere. This is The Break. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Africa sits as the largest exporter of cocoa for the world, as it exports over 70% or 75% of the cocoa being used all over the world. We have Ivory Coast, we have Ghana, and of course we have our own very dear own Nigeria. Today we are talking about reviving the cocoa industry in Nigeria, using Nigeria as a case study for Africa. And I'm not alone. I have two very handsome gentlemen. You know what they say about a woman who has two husbands, or a husband and a side boy? She's never out of money and, of course, gifts and spoiling. On my right-hand side, I have my very handsome guest. His name is Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze. He's a motivational speaker, an intelligent young man, and, of course, the vice president of Femi Wash Limited. You're welcome to the show, sir. Good morning.
Swift, a blessing to be here this morning.
This is as Dr. Daniel said. You look handsome. I like your tie. You look good. Simple. And of course, my left hand side, my co-anchor. Of course, I call him my co-culprit in crime.
Thank you.
My co-culprit in crime.
Thank
yes.
you, Swift. Thank you.
I will put doctor to your name today, so that it's not only one side.
No. until the person by your right hand side, we call him an institution. So
can I acknowledge, doctor, please? Can I put doctor
for
this program?
Is it Prof?
No. Prof. God bless you. And on my right, I have Prof.
You said on your right.
Sorry, on my left.
Great.
Oh my God. All right, so gentlemen, today we are talking about reviving, of course, the cocoa industry in Africa. First of all, we have done a bit from banter. I want to know what's your take on the cocoa industry in Africa using Nigeria as a case study, sir?
Well, I see that a lot has been said about cocoa industry in Africa. As you rightly said, from Cote d'Ivoire to Ghana to Nigeria. The industry has evolved over the years, and I think a lot has happened. I used to be in a class of a very known professor of economies, and this argument came up on the time. Why do Nigerians stop farming cocoa? You see, the challenge are many for us. If you look at Nigerian's case, at least we had alternatives, things we could switch to quickly. And because there was not so much investment in research and development in that sector, much is not achieved. Yeah, because there's a whole lot in terms of pests, destroying the products you have, seed and yielding, fertilizer supply, and the rest of it. So all this were such a limitation. And then, of course, you saw that before the 1986 military removal of all the limitations around the marketing of cocoa, a lot of people felt that the marketing board actually were ripping off farmers. And then, of course, they were making the big money and paying peanuts to the farmer because they were taking the cocoa from the farm. And you know the law of arbitrages. If you take something, you keep it, and after a while, the prices get up. And the farmer can't wait to keep it that long because they need the money. And so they feel that, of course, these people who were at the middle, of course, which is government, were taking more money from the farmers, and it was a whole lot of discouragement that came. But I also think that there's a whole lot that happened because, you see, industries also were opening up opportunity for newer crops because cocoa is a perennial crop. So we also have annual crops that were making a lot of money. And then there was this shift, people moving from what was profitable, what was not too profitable to something that was much more profitable. And I think that movement always happened. And I think that is what the resurgence you're seeing right now, because there's a whole lot of money coming into cocoa trade. And so people are now beginning to take a new interest and a new look into it. I think probably that is what is actually making the government to think about setting up a management board. Yes, of course, but the farmers are saying, look, we don't want you to buy, we don't want you to sell.
Yes.
Just regulate and then provide us credit, as it were, so we can do our business by ourselves.
Priye is itching, Professor Priye, by the way, is itching to ask a question.
Okay. No, we're for questions for clarity from doctor. Okay, so he mentioned some of the diseases that were, challenges that actually was a drawback to the production of cocoa. But one thing I want doctor to address, because I think he has, it happened during those times where probably he was my age.
No. I'm trying to tell him doctor is an old man because
maybe when he was my age. I'm a toddler. Maybe when he was my age.
Yes.
So there was this effort by the government to bring in the commodities board from the 6 geopolitical zones and created a central board that equally served as one of the bottlenecks that restricted the expansion of the industry, of the cocoa industry. And is it that the central board, when it was centralized, the peculiarities regards to each region at that point in time were not well managed.
Yeah,
There are some people that were producing more, but they were selling very minimally, very, very small amount because there's a uniform price. Did that contribute to the bureaucracy and the drawback?
No, I don't think that was necessarily it. I took this on with Professor Tomori, God bless his soul, some years ago, and I said, I think African scholars need to do a lot of more research and see why some certain things happen. Because I remember sitting there in class and we were talking about how people left agriculture to pursue oil money. And I think Preye has alluded to that already this morning. That because we found oil, people shifted from oil. I have grown up as an Edo boy. At least we have oil around near our backyard. I have never seen oil money since I was born. And I don't think my father ever pursued it, and I don't think my mother ever pursued it. So it would be wrong for scholars to come to table to argue that the reason why my father wasn't tapping rubber was because he saw oil money. And I told the professor it was wrong, because you need to have gone to the field to go find out why people were not doing what they were doing. At that time, as a young boy, I grew up to see that, of course, we were tapping rubber. And very early in the morning, we go to the farm, tap rubber, come to school, and then finish from school, go and collect the one you had tapped in the morning. And then on Sunday, you are a big boy, just like you said. If I was still tapping rubber, I would have been able to give you money this morning. Oh but unfortunately...
No, we're done. I just need to inform you, Dr. ATM is somewhere here. We all know the PIN. Is this a way of saying we shouldn't access that ATM?
Well, yes, because the money is no longer there. That's the point I'm trying to make. So the money was there at that time, and you wake up in the morning on a Sunday morning, you are a big boy. So we were less dependent on our parents, and we're actually contributing to their economy. Yes. Now, something happened one morning, and we woke up on a Sunday morning, and the guys came to buy rubber, and then they went away. And they said, of course, money didn't come. Because at that point, when the market was at its peak, what was happening was that even the people who were the middlemen come to the farm to give you money in advance. Wow. So there were variations in pricing. So if a man who buys, I understand that this other guy is buying from you, and he will top it with 1 kobo. Okay. So there was this competition. And for us who were tapping, we were just going to the farm and then, of course, just giving rubber. And then this thing happened, and they said, a week, we didn't see money. 2 weeks, there was no money. Wow. 1 month, no money. 3 months, no money. In short, those guys who were the middlemen, they started to run away from the village. Why? Because children were almost going to lynch them. Because they thought that they had taken their money and they had abandoned them. And I remember on one certain occasion, one of them had to take one of our uncle to Saple because that was the shipping port for rubber. And see, the one we brought in the last 1-2 months, they are here. Nobody is taking them. Oh, my God. And nobody was taking the rubbers. So they couldn't sell. And that was because while we were making so much money from rubber, we didn't invest in the value chain.
Okay.
Yes.
So we were depending on the West to take the raw rubber and use. Of course, same happened with groundnut.
Yes.
So groundnut, usually you remember, still up to tomorrow, they say they call it groundnut oil.
Yes.
It's only now we're trying to change the name to vegetable oil because it was a major source for cooking oil. Yes. And when, of course, the price of groundnut became too expensive, new technology came, the blending of kernel came, which was quite cheaper. And then that affected the pricing for groundnut. And in that same era, you find that, of course, concentrates were made from Europe, that people who were hitherto buying cocoa to produce beverages were no longer going to rely on cocoa as much. So they were going to be relying on concentrate to produce Ovaltine and the rest of them, which even, of course, the company, especially the Odwa group, was producing Ovaltine at that time. So they were now relying on concentrate. And what happened? A lot of people lost interest in that farm because the value that was coming to the farm was not as it used to be. Yes. And of course, you know, for every businessman and farmers, all you are looking for is value. You want more money. And if the product is not bringing you money, you must have to divert your energy to what will bring in more money. So, and I think these are the trajectory around agricultural produce in Africa. And like I said, the major reason is because we're not adding value to it. Imagine that, of course, we were the major consumer of these products. A lot would have happened for us so that we don't really need to depend on their market. But if you ask me now, what is responsible for this resurgence? You will also discover that today there's a shift in analysis. That people are expressing fear about so many processed products, and people are going back to natural, organic products. So this is what is actually the one that is creating the resurgence in this industry. And I think we need to do a little bit of research as Africans, so we are not not understanding our reality or the root cause of our problem, and then we'll be treating symptoms. And I think these are the issue. But you see, take for example, he also mentioned about the newly proposed bill to establish a management board for cocoa. Now, if you look at even the rationale, for me, it also seems very wrong. Because if you see, one of the key words that I underlined there is the fact that because Europeans are saying that, look, from December last year, they're not going to be buying any agricultural products that is not deforestation free. You know, I am a student of Kwame Nkrumah, and I love him so well. Because this is, again, some barrier and wedges that we are putting in here. Yes. So I think that we as Africans must do a lot to see, really not about managing how we are going to collect and sell outside, but to see how do we add value to what we are producing here and make it useful to us rather than continue to rely on the foreign markets.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so, you want to ask it? Yes, please do.
Now, the European Union deforestation regulation was what you just referenced in this conversation. And knowing fully well that that is a continent or a climate that actually import most of this product from Côte d'Ivoire, from Ghana, and also from Nigeria. Côte d'Ivoire, that has been doing excellently well on that platform, embraced this policy that you just mentioned. And as a result of that, they've been able to map out 1.2 million farms in their country that is not going against the deforestation regulation that has been set by the European Union, because they know that they have a market there and they want to sustain the export of this product down there. Yes, it might be limiting some other countries or limiting Nigeria, but don't you think as a way of sustainability, even though you are chasing the economy and value and what it can bring to your economy, sustainability is very, very important because of climate change. That is why this policy is in place. Do you think if we embrace it the way Côte d'Ivoire has embraced it, we will be making good sense? Because this is climate change and we need to maintain the environment, the global standards.
Yeah, but when you look at it from different perspectives, the first perspective you're going to look at is, as Africans, we have 60% of the global uncultivated land. Yes. So there are still more forests in Africa than you have in Europe. That's the first way to look at it. Number two, African is not as susceptible to climate challenges as Europe's are. Yes. So why are these regulations in place? Is a key question to ask. Is to control what you produce, and I think that's the essence. And that's really why I feel that for us, you see, because if we're making more money, what happens? A lot of people get into it.
Yes.
So if we get into it, which means we're going to clear a lot of forests to plant cocoa. And they are not going to buy our cocoa because we are cutting down trees. Yes. Now, what that means is that, so just look at it from that perspective. So cocoa themselves are forests.
Yes.
Have you? So if you're actually talking about climate, in short, the more cocoa we plant, the more green and oxygen that is available to our environment. Yeah. So how does that reduce or contribute to climate issues? And that's why I say, really, as Africans, we must sit down as a continent to look at ourselves and tell ourselves that we need to own our yam and our knife. And not over-rely on some of these issues, because these are all arrangements that are done here and there. What we're talking about is expanding the frontiers of production. So that we can have some we are using here, we can export some, and we can trade some, can add value to some, and that, of course, will cause our economy to grow, in my view. But when you now say, oh, you don't have land, and you are talking about forestation in Africa, deforestation in Africa, you should plant trees because you don't have one. Here we have enough of it. So it's to understand what the policy is actually meant for. And this is the problem. Of course, like Krumale highlighted in his book, Neocolonialism, the last phase of imperialism, that you see that when they see that you are making progress this way, they find a way to close the door so that they can move you to a new direction. That will favor them. And then, of course, you have to start afresh, and you are invested. So I'm only just being cautious as an African that we are not going to continually be tied to the apron string of these Western powers who dictate policy issues for us. We should know what is good for us. We are grown-up men and women, and then we should be able to think and know what is good for our environment, what is not good for our environment, so that we don't just follow people's narrative that at the end of the day may not necessarily be adding value to us, and we cannot expand our frontiers so that we can become very, very profitable as a people. That's my point.
Okay. So coming from this, your narrative, sir, there's also a narrative from some of the cocoa farmers. They claim that, look, there are some states in Nigeria that they produce cocoa, in quotes, but they keep it all shush. And those states, they export, and it's not being documented. So some people are the slaves, the cash cows, the Ekiti, the Edo. Those are the slaves, in quote. Those are the people that are pushed forward, cross rivers. Those are the ones that tell you this is what we have produced and this is what we are giving to government. I'm asking, because I was looking through the whole new board. There is no policy that is insisting on pushing certain states like Taraba, because they call the names of those states. Taraba produces cocoa. We are not seeing any dividend from Taraba. But anything Ekiti produces, the eyes of the government are on it. In your view, do you think these are one of the factors that are mitigating against effective production and the revival of the cocoa industry in Nigeria?
Well, I think it has to really do with what expertise and the level of enlightenment for some certain people. And only God knows as people experience of certain things. You know, growing up as a child, we didn't have plenty of the farm around us, but we had some scattered up trees. For us, they were edible fruits. We just lick the fruit and throw them away.
Okay.
Nobody was selling it.
That's for cocoa.
Yes, cocoa. Oh. So we wait for them to ripe. They ripe, we break it, lick the cocoa, the sweet part, and throw the seed away because we didn't know how useful it was.
And the seed is the gold.
Yeah. So that's the level of enlightenment, just like cashew. We have some scattered trees of cashews everywhere. People just eat the fruit and throw the seed away. But the real money is in the seed. So that level of enlightenment, I think that is what we need, really. That how people use some certain things. It may not necessarily be for export, because if it's going to be for export, if you are going through the seaport, you're going through the airport, definitely some of all these things will be declared. And we know where it is passing, except that they are using the back door to take them out. But I'm not saying,
they said there's a back door.
Yeah, so if people are using back door to ship, then of course customs should put their eye on the ground so that these things don't pass through the back door. But I think state government should also be interested, because what it means is that whatever thing that gets out, all the tax that come from it also come to the state. And that also makes some revenue for the state government, not just for the farmer alone, but the state also benefiting at the end of the day. But I think that what we really need is the level of enlightenment. I remember in 2019, we were having a meeting somewhere in Abuja, and that day, Professor Patu told me, I think he just came from Vietnam, and he was telling us a story that he got to Vietnam, and they were talking about the market for cashew nuts, and he was asking them, why didn't you come to set up in Nigeria? And this guy said, oh, we came some years back, but the environment was not friendly for us to be able to do business, so we went to set it up in Cote d'Ivoire. But the actual fact is that there are a number of tonnage that, of course, Vietnam actually require Nigeria. But as at present, we can only do about like 50 to 60%. So which means there's still room for like 40%, which is not covered. So which means if we do more farm really for cashew, there is going to be a lot of value for us. And people are thinking of what to, and it's productive. I saw a young man who told me he invested some money in cashew gathering. And he said his cousin who does the trade stays in the UK. He come to Nigeria between February and July and gather, and then move back to UK. After spending the money, he come back the next year to gather. And he's making real money from it. So if people know that there are opportunities in this trade and business, and it's clear to everybody, it's not a secret that is hidden from some other persons, I think a lot of people will take advantage of it. Right. So what is missing in our environment is the fact that we need to put emphasis on enlightenment so that we know that, look, these days there's value that come to its farmers. So rather than people stay outside, they are also part and parcel of that ecosystem that is producing this value, and then, of course, Nigerians get better for it, and Africa at large will, of course, be better.
Okay. All right. So, Doc, what is the role? What is the role of the Commodities Board? Now, the reason why I'm asking that question is because in the exploits that Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana has done for cocoa, and to also make sure that they cover every nook and cranny from the value chain to processing and to export, targeting the market and sustaining that market where they have targeted, because that is where they get their foreign exchange. What's the marketing board in those countries are playing a very great role, especially in Cote d'Ivoire, that is producing about 700,000 tons today as we speak, and Nigeria is just doing about 200,000. And
I think we've moved up a little bit now to about 305,000.
Yes.
So what can we learn through the instrument of the marketing board from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire and replicate same, so that at least we can move up higher?
Yeah, I think the whole idea, which of course this will become something like the right direction to actually take, is number one, the marketing board, if you set it up and they run properly, first and foremost, should invest in research, development of seedlings, so that you can have maximum yield. Today, Israel talks about precision agriculture, where you can plant 10 trees of orange, and you can determine the tonnage you want from that orange, depending on how you feed that orange. Precision. So if we say we are going to get 10 tons, it's 10 tons, and no waste. And those are product of research. And we named that. I remember listening to somebody a Nigerian who is a professor in Malaysia, and was saying that he was trying to invest in that effort in doing a research around our palm. And he was saying, look, if you look at the palm in Malaysia and see what it produces and the yield, compared to the yield here, you'll find that it's far apart. If you look at rice, for example, if you plant rice in an acre of land here, what you're going to get as yield compared to what you're going to get in Thailand is far apart. Here it's about 3 tons. In Thailand, it's 16 tons. So that's huge value. And I think we need that serious research in farm produce so that farmers can actually maximize that. Even if you have a small farm, and then because the seedlings have been improved, somehow that you can generate yield. And then, of course, we have the right fertilizing for this yield and the support, the nutrient that is brought in. Here, people will be able to get what is right. Number 2, quality control, which is also very important. And this issue of quality control is one thing that we have also suffered a great deal. Yes. Take, for example, our cassava can't get into UK because they said it has some carcinogenic substance, and our yam too. But if you get to Ghana, it gets in there. Because a whole lot has been done by the board to ensure that there's standardization of the product that is leaving the country, that is meeting international standard, and it can get into any kind of market. Now, it is the role of the marketing board to be able to do all this and ensure that there is a standard that is kept. And I think this is quite fundamental, this is quite important, that we need a lot of enlightenment. A friend of mine said to me some years ago, he came to do some trading in Nigeria and came to buy garlic from Nigeria. So he said he took it outside. And then, of course, the pricing that he was given was quite high. So he went into a shop, and then, of course, the price he got in that shop was quite high. So he was making an inquiry, and he said, what's the difference? He said, this is organic. So this is organic, quite expensive. So he said it was one.
Nigerian was organic.
No. He didn't even know that what he had was organic.
Yes.
Okay.
So he said, what organic? I said, of course, because there are no any additive to it, no fertilizer, it's just grown. So he came to Nigeria and he said, how do you grow these things? And he said, well, we just plant it because our environment is used to it. We don't add anything to it grow. He said, but that's organic.
And that's the most expensive.
Yes.
The most expensive. You see, because we don't even know what we're selling. And that is because there is nobody who is there looking at the environment, doing the study for them. So we need those kind of quality control, how to cut it, how to do all this, put it together, and then you ship it. And then that makes a lot of money for you. So these are the things that we need to invest in as a people. So cocoa, for example, who is cleaning it, these people can determine. So set up small industry that can help in cleaning, burning, of course, or roasting, whatever they call it. And then, of course, people can even blend it. And this creates a lot of job for people within the environment. And then you can ship it outside for whatever thing that they want to use it for. So the marketing board will do that role to ensure that there's standard. Now also ensure that, of course, credit is available to farmers so that whatever thing that they need that they can use to invest in their farm, that they can get some of those credit. And these are some of the things. And in rare cases, where you have, for example, drought and the rest of the things happen, they can also help the farmer to be able to live. And then they are not just going to quit the farm, but ensure that they are sustained. And when prices are falling, they also find a way to stabilize prices so that farmers are always encouraged to continue to go to the farm. So these are some of the things that the marketing board should do for the farmers, not necessarily taking undue advantage of the farmers.
So, Doctor, I'm about to throw one to you. And by the way, fantastic analysis so far. I'm very proud I got you on board. Unfortunately, you have refused to drop the ATM pin, but we were still with you.
That was when I used to tap around.
So right now, a lot of farmers have complained that, look, they have diseases that are affecting this cocoa produce. That sometimes you plant, you put in so much effort, and by the time it's time to harvest, you are being attacked. Of course, there's also security issues in Nigeria, which is a sentimental thing right now that some of us don't want to dive into. But I want to ask, what do you think government can do to encourage these people who are still producing cocoa? Because right now, we now realize that, okay, this can be the new oil, or this should be the new oil and the new gold for Nigeria. What do you think government can do, especially when it comes to diseases? These people are complaining that it's like they are just on their own. Now, there's another trust factor. A week ago or so, you talked about the trust factor between people and the government. Back in the day, farmers could, lean towards government. But right now, a lot of cocoa farmers are afraid of government inputs because they feel once government comes in, what happened in 1986 that, the whole cocoa board had to be scrapped may start again. What's your advice to government at this point, sir?
Well, I think it's just natural that we find ourselves in this kind of a terrain where government is desperate for money. Government is desperate for money.
Priya doesn't agree.
No, he doesn't necessarily need to agree. But if you've done a startup before, you will understand what this means. I started a business some years ago in our village in Edo State. And I was trying to see how to invest in that community. And in 1 year, local government is pushing me, state is pushing me. and I was looking for money to even invest in the business, and they want to be reaping when the business has not started to make profit. So this is a big problem. So when government get involved is how much money they can take away from your pocket. That is what the issues are. And that is not the way to grow a business. And that can actually become a disincentive. So this is a problem that why people are afraid to say, okay, if you bring government in, they are calculating, okay, this is what is leaving your farm, this is the tax you are going to pay. And then they give you a bill. And the tax, of course, is not considering your input.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's only looking at the value that you are selling. So this is a problem. But you see, the issue of pest control is something that we have done in the past. Take, for example, we have the Cocoa Research Board, we have the Rubber Research Institute, we have the Palm Research Institute. One still in Naifor today, the other one still in, somewhere in Edo also, where they were studying rubber. And all these things were put in place. They were actually to do research and see how we can avoid some of these pitfalls that we find in farms. But unfortunately, these institutes are not funded. And so the people just go there, maybe at the end of the month, go and collect salary, and they're not doing anything substantial. For example, the Iyanomo Rubber Research Institute is still there. I still have some couple of people who work in there, but they're not doing anything substantial because there's no rubber, there's nothing, but they are federal government staff, they are collecting money and salary at the end of the month, but there's nothing happening. So this is a problem where government need to put a lot of energy because the life or the soul of development is R&D. Government in developed nations put more money in R&D than they put on physical projects.
Wow.
So if we must grow and develop like the developing nations, then we must be ready to fund R&D. I remember some years ago we were talking about somewhere in LBS, and the professor was telling us how Abacha was begging him to bring his brother to just visit Nigeria and go back, Philip Emengwali. And his man said, look, I can't come because American government has put so much money on the ground for me to develop internet so that people can have a meeting and shake hands across continent without necessarily meeting. That is the project I'm working on. But today that is a reality.
Yes.
You understand it? But somebody put the money down.
For that to become possible.
Yes, to become a reality. So we need to deliberately and necessarily set funds aside for research and development. But you see, for politicians, it doesn't really matter because you can't count the money you put on research and development. Because when you go back to ask the people, they will ask, what did you do for us? You can't show road. You say you are doing research. So they think that is the money you have stolen. But this is a problem and a dilemma in our environment. But I think it is important that government invests in research and development. And I hope that the new management board for the cocoa will be able to establish an arm that will invest heavily in research to control pests and ensure that there's high yield. And then, of course, we can maintain a standard quality that can get into the international market.
Ladies and gentlemen, talking about investing in research and development, we want to take you people on our own personal research, and we call this cash craft, and that's where we focus on something very spectacular. And today we are going to be talking about cocoa, and we have something else in line for you. Don't go anywhere. We are going on a quick break, and when I come back, Doctor on my right and of course Professor Preye on my left are still going to be doing fantastic analysis to this topic we have on ground. Don't go anywhere. My name is Swift Aderinto. See you in a bit. I know you've been enjoying the show thus far. My name is still Swift Aderinto, and today we are talking about reviving the cocoa industry in Nigeria, using it as a case study for Africa economic development and growth. And of course, I'm not alone in the building. I have two handsome gentlemen. They always tell you Jesus always moved around with his disciples. Some were lawyers, some were carpenters, some were fishermen. So you always move with people that are smarter than you. At least they are bringing something to the table, and this table is full. On my right-hand side, I have Dr. Idahosa, full of a lot of, money, dollars, pounds, and of course, enlightenment to share. How are you, sir?
I'm cool, and you?
And on my left-hand side, I have the acclaimed Professor Priye. Priye, how are you?
I'm okay.
Okay, yes.
so Doc.
Wait, now
Okay.
you said what? You
said we were out of
Priye,
time
you're always
before.
running into
You said we were out of
politics.
time
Like
before.
Nigerian politician just wants to share money. Calm down. We're with you.
Okay. So
ask your question.
yeah.
Priye.
So from 1940 to 1970, we were on our peak in cocoa. That's 30 years. But the thing is, what you can see from that system is that for us to develop the cocoa processing plants and all those industries did not come to life. Neither did it come to fruition. Why? And that's one part of the areas that the Cote d'Ivoire, the Ivorians, and the Ghanaians got it right. What happened 30 years? What were we doing?
Yeah, but again, I think what eventually happened to us, to even say them in very clear terms, somebody described it as the feeding bottle type of federalism that we started to practice, that every month people take their cab to Abuja to go and take allocation. Made it very difficult because when those areas you talked about, what we have was regional government, and every region was struggling and they were competing hugely. Awolowo was funding, for example, free education in the West here. I went to a village far away after Ilaro, they call it Igbogila. I saw tarred road.
Oh.
I saw pipe-borne water. Then. And so it was a competition for these regional lords to ensure that they surpass what other regions were doing. And so they concentrated their energy on their comparative advantage. So they became competitive. But today what you have, federalism has been framed in such a way that states become very lazy and other component units of the federation. And that's why you see that nobody's working hard to see how to actually develop what they have in their state, as long as when they go to Abuja, something come in. And I think that is what we need to actually work on. How do we rework our federalism? That, of course, states are allowed to actually take care of themselves and not necessarily go to Abuja to go share cake, and then they can focus energy on cake building. This is where we need to transform. And that's actually what has happened even to all these agricultural things that we have spoken about. Because as long as states have source and they are sure that at least we can have money that can move us around, then nobody is working hard. Because nature has so endowed us as a country that every state in Nigeria has such resource, natural resource endowment in commercial quantity that will be enough to actually take care of the state if states are given their rightful responsibility to take care of themselves. But unfortunately, on every month we go to suck the feeding bottle in Abuja, and then of course we really never grow up. And that's a problem I feel that we need as a country to work on. Let it be that even the state just pay royalty to the center, the way it's done in America today. And so if royalty are sent to the center, so of course you now know that it is now, the onus is on you to produce what you will eat and eat what you produce. When we get to that level, I think a lot of things will be straightened up. Then we can be as competitive as these other people you just talked about in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana.
Talking of getting to the levels, ladies and gentlemen, we have gotten to that level on this table that the producers asked us to leave. As much as we do not want to leave, well, we're running out of time, but we will definitely do this again because we have so much to say. Priye, just drop something for your people at home that are watching.
Oh, okay. The Minister of Agriculture in 2023 came to see the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, and he mentioned something. He said, I came to Nigeria and I ate guava, and I still find the seeds inside. Said, I think that was what Doc was talking about, precision farming. He said, in Israel, you can't find the seeds anymore because through technology, we've been able to transform that. And I think Nigeria agricultural industry should be heading towards that direction.
Invest in research and development Africa will be transformed, and of course, we will be the bride to the other continents of the globe.
Okay, talking about brides, like I tell you, eat Africa, dream Africa, buy Africa, and only sell Africa. This is still Just Africa. My name is Swift Aderinto. Don't forget, this comes up from 8 a.m. to, of course, 9:30 on Mondays to Fridays. Souk News Television, be Africa. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.